Next, we have joining us my friend Jody Eldred. We're going to talk about the Blackmagic URSA Mini Pro 12K because we're both users. He doesn't work for the company, but we thought that it would be more beneficial to actually hear from people that use the camera. Jody, let's tell them some of the great things about the Blackmagic URSA 12K.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting that I started with the 4.6K G1, their very first generation 4.6. Actually, their 4K camera that preceded that. They asked me to be a tester for them. I had been doing testing work for Sony for about 15 years, and with the Venice and going back to F55 and all the way back to their XD-Cam 350 and so forth. So they wanted the perspective of somebody who had had other cameras that they had used, like, what do you think about this? So Roy Wagner and I, actually Roy is an ASC, shot a feature film on the 4.6K G1, and I was his technology consultant because I had more stick time with that. So I got to see a real master work with that, and then worked with the G2, and then newer iterations, including the 6K pocket cameras, and I've been shooting with two of these for a couple of years. So I do have a basis of reference for these to be able to compare them to other things. And I've also shot with the Venice and a variety of other cameras too. So I'm not here as a fanboy for Blackmagic or any other company, and those of you who know me know that. So I just wanted to give that little caveat in the beginning. The camera, you can shoot 4K, 6K, 8K, or 12K, so you do have all four of those flavors in there. It has the B-RAW, the Blackmagic RAW codec in there, which I really, really like a lot. It's a very light payload. The compression that Blackmagic has created for this, it's a very elegant compression. And even at some of the higher compression ratios, if you were to take those and put them on a big screen and really pixel peep, I don't think you would see the artifacts that you might expect from a camera that's recording 12K with really high compression. And so for that reason, it's not that big of a deal to
Yeah,
shoot
post guys
12K
get
in that.
scared when you say 12K.
Yeah, and I would too.
But
if
with
it weren't
decent
for that.
compression, the B-RAW, it's really easy. You can
Yeah.
edit it on a laptop.
Yes,
12K.
and some of the codecs are lighter than what you would get in ProRes, which is pretty great.
And we're shooting with them today, by the way.
Yes, we are. And so having a 12K sensor that that you're subsampling down to, whatever, 4K, 6K, 8K, or so forth, you're getting it's an 80 megapixel sensor, so you're getting quite a lot of data there. So your lower resolution images look even smoother, looking a little bit more high quality. It's got about 14 stops dynamic range, which is plenty for everything that we're doing. Question immediately comes up, why the heck 12K? That's a ridiculous overkill. Well, you don't have to shoot 12K with it. I've shot all the other resolutions. It really depends on the project that
we're
you're
shooting
doing.
4K today.
Yeah. So, we have deliverables are typically 4K nowadays and have been for a while. So if you want to stabilize, if you want to digitally zoom in, reframe, whatever, you need to have something bigger than 4K, right? Or you're going to be, losing pixels as you do that. So I regularly shoot in 8K with this. That's kind of my regular thing, even if I'm just shooting a documentary or whatever, because I can edit it easily. And also in Resolve, which I use, you can edit proxies, so you don't, there's no heavy weight. You don't, I use an M2 Mac Mini Pro. It's not in the studio. It's like a $1,500 editing machine. It works totally great with that. So there's a lot of reasons to have that. The 12K is very, very useful in doing virtual production. If you're shooting plates, I've been working for the past couple of years with Sam Nicholson, ASC. Some of you know him, of course. A lot of people here I see know Sam well, and we were working on Taika Waititi's series, Our Flag Means Death, for HBO Max. They had a huge screen that they built at Warner Brothers. It was 160 feet across by 30 feet tall. Well, this is the LED wall. So think about that. Bigger than half the size of a football field turned up on its side. And they built a life-size pirate ship on a gimbal in front of it. And that's where they shot about probably 80 or 90% of this. And so to shoot the plates for that, ocean plates and beaches and everything, we had 4 or 5 of these shooting 12K at the same time, putting them together because we needed like 60K up there. So we went to Puerto Rico and shot for about a week and came home with 200 terabytes of data. And
Now that is a little scary.
Yeah, but it was all B-RAW, so it was manageable. But are you doing those kinds of big giant shoots all the time in this? Do you always need that? No, not really. But I will say for shooting stuff that's going to be on a volume, you know, if this was an LED wall back here, and if this was 12K, let's say, you're not always shooting a wide shot where you see that. You're going to be shooting this. So if you're shooting this much on that, what's the resolution of that once you punch in? HD, maybe? So if you're not starting out with pretty high resolution on that wall back there, when you go to these tighter shots, you're kind of looking for trouble back there because you are going to see far less resolution, which can introduce more which we're going to talk about as well, and a myriad of other things. I do just also want to talk about the camera, and I don't want to come off as a salesman or fanboy because I'm not. I use a variety of things. But I really do like the color science on this camera. I really love the way it renders flesh tones. I love the way the highlights roll off. It's very quiet in the blacks. And do we want to talk about OLPF yet, or?
Yeah, but I want to say a couple things first.
Sure.
One, you mentioned about reframing. I've done some pretty interesting tests. You can shoot a wide shot and get your close-ups at the same time, single shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to a certain extent, you know, you can push it pretty far. I shot a 2-shot interview and then zoomed in digitally for the close-ups, and it worked pretty well.
No, it totally does. In fact, I just finished a feature-length documentary, which I was editing, but also was a DP on probably a dozen interviews. And we shot them in 8K, and we shot them pretty much waist ahead. And because we were delivering in 4K, I could cut into this at any time I wanted. So I didn't have to have multiple camera or a couple of cameras unless you wanted different angles. But in terms of shot sizes, it's very simple to do that. You could shoot cowboy, you could shoot here and cut into a tight shot without losing any pixels. It's terrific tool.
You mentioned stabilization, but maybe not everybody knows why you have to use a little extra picture area to stabilize. Can you explain that?
If you're using a stabilization tool like in Resolve, for example, or Premiere, or whatever it may be, you know, to do that, you've got to zoom in just a little bit so that the algorithms in there can move, can do counter moves to whatever is shaking in there. If you don't do that at all, then you're going to see black at the top and bottom, you know, to fix whatever was happening while you were doing this. Does that make sense? So it does have to zoom in a little bit. Now, if you've got some serious stabilization issues and you really want it to look like it was on a tripod, which is a little bit hard to do even with the advanced algorithms, then you've got to zoom in even more. Like if I'm shooting on a boat or something and I really wanted this to be stable and there was a lot of movement, you know, X, Y, and Z axes and so forth, then you do need to have something higher resolution to be able to punch in and do that. So don't think that shooting in 8K, for example, is a waste of pixels. You will find it to be very, very utilitarian.
It can save your butt.
Yes, exactly.
Not that DPs like to have their work reframed, but if you're planning for it, it can be
Yeah,
good.
exactly. In fact, we're shooting a project in a few weeks that's it's a trailer for a film that hasn't been made yet, so that's how we're marketing it. You know, we're making it look like, oh, they shot the movie, here's the trailer. And we're going to be shooting with a 12K camera, and because we have a limited budget in a short time frame, I know there's going to be times where we're not going to go back and do another take to get a tighter shot. It's like we just don't have time. So we're going to shoot a lot of stuff cowboy, and when they say, okay, you want to go in for a close-up, I've already got it. Now, the only difference there is obviously the physics of a longer lens, zooming in, you're going to get shallower depth of field when you go to that. So that is a creative decision.
Yeah, and you can only push it so far.
Yes, exactly. But that is one of the advantages, like we're going to be able to get the wide, medium, and tights in some of the cases all at the same time, save us money, we'll be able to get the coverage we need and we can move on.
Yeah, now the reason that I invested in the camera, they didn't give me one, by the way. Some people think that that's how it works.
Yes.
No, I buy these cameras. And they are loaning us the extra ones to shoot today, but I don't think this is mine, but one of these is mine. And I bought it because I wanted to be able to shoot background plates. I imagined, oh, it's going to be a lot of work coming up shooting background plates. Now that there's virtual production, it never happened. But I use the camera for a lot of different things, and I've been very pleased with it.
How do you like it compared to other cameras you've used? Because you've used everything and you shot film.
Yeah, I love it. You know, it's not the very best camera, but it punches way above its weight. I think that point was really well made in the HBO camera assessment series. Did some of you guys get a chance to see that? We did a couple screenings for DCS at Paramount and at the Academy's Linwood Dunn Theater. There was the Arri Alexa 35. There was the latest Red, Sony Venice 2, this camera, and film. and they wouldn't have tested a camera if it wasn't a camera that was okay to use as an A camera on a HBO series. But when you compare all these cameras, this one looked great in a lot of situations. Like the red looked great in low light, and the cameras, the Venice 2 and the Alexa 35, they look terrific. But this camera looks, 95% of that, and it's a $6,000 camera.
Yeah.
Those are quite a bit more. And
It's amazing.
and for a lot of things, this will do a great job.
Oh, yeah.
And the extra resolution in some of these cases can pay off.
You know,
big
and
bonuses.
that picture, the Roy Wagner shot that I was mentioning called Stand that we did 5 or 6 years ago now with the G1, the first 4.6K. If I were to show you that picture and you were to watch it in a theater, and I've seen it in the DGA theater, and if I were to tell you, yeah, we shot that with the Alexa or we shot it with the Venice, if it had been around then, you would, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. You would have no question. There would be nothing you would go, no, there's no way that is, it absolutely is that kind of quality, it just is. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be using it.
So I bought it to shoot background for virtual production, but Blackmagic has recently made an adaptation to the camera that's ideal for shooting inside the volume and a lot of other things. They've added the option to have an OLPF. Can you tell them what that is?
I have no idea. It stands for Optical Low Pass Filter, and I don't know of any other cinema cameras right now that don't have it. I think the Venice and the Alexas and the Reds, as far as I know, everybody has them. And I think initially Blackmagic maybe didn't put them in because it does add to some expense, and you do have to take the existing IR cut filter out and replace it and so forth. But there got to be such a demand, and Rawlite had come out with their own, which I had also used. We had used Rawlite's OLPF on that movie Stand that Roy shot, and it was indispensable for that. We were shooting some scenes, Steadicams walking through multiple layers of lace that were hanging in front of the camera in a shop where they were making them, and we're moving them. Now you imagine just even putting 2 layers of net in front of each other, that's gonna moire like crazy. So we had like 3 layers of lace, and we could not have shot that had we not had an OLPF. It would have been all unusable.
So it's a filter that's behind the lens, built into the camera now. It's an option. You can have it with or without. I think it's only like $200 more.
Yeah,
on the
it's
camera
not a lot.
to get it.
Yeah.
And it takes out very fine detail that really you can't see otherwise, but it stops things like moire happening when you have real close parallel lines. And we took it to Sam Nicholson's Stargate Studios. He has a small volume at his office.
One of the great pioneers in virtual production. I mean, the technology that you saw in Mandalorian, a lot of that was stuff that he actually came up with to begin with. And all the stuff that was on, Our Flag Means Death, and lots of episodic TV and features. Sam's been the guy that's like creating this technology from the start. And he had some really, really positive things to say about the utility of this particular camera, which he's used extensively.
And we shot some tests with and without it in the volume. Let me see if we're here today at Sam Nicholson, ASC's Stargate Studios. And we're here to test the new OLPF that's been added to the Blackmagic URSA Mini Pro 12K camera. Right now we're shooting without the OLPF installed. This is the original camera, and we're shooting with a Lights 25mm prime. You can see that there's significant moire over my shoulder.
And it's very noticeable.
Yeah.
There's two kind of applications. Can you see that where the moire is happening on those color things on there? When you have very, very fine details, and I'm sure everybody in here has dealt with that at some point, a shirt that's tight, checkered, whatever, a chain link fence that's kind of far away, bricks on a wall that are kind of far away, it's easy to introduce aliasing or moire. And those things they're very similar. They're not quite exactly the same thing, but they're pretty close.
So we did an identical shot with
Yes.
the OLPF.
Yes,
This
we
is
had one
without.
camera
This
without
is my
it.
original camera.
So this is a camera, the same 12K camera, exactly the same one, same lens, same everything. No optical low pass filter, which is filtering out the tiny little detail stuff that is causing that problem in the first place. So let's go to.
Now we're shooting identical shot, same spot, same camera, except that this one has an OLPF installed and the same lens, the Lights 25mm prime. You can see that the moire pattern is gone.
Yeah, we took the camera off the sticks, put a camera on there that did have the OLPF, took the exact same lens, put it on there so it was a locked off shot, same focal distance, same aperture and so forth. And like, wow, like before and after. I mean, it's very noticeable. So there's two applications for the OLPF in this world of virtual production. One is the actual capture of the plates. Now, if you're shooting in 12K, the likelihood of you getting Moire is a little bit less than if you're shooting 8.6 4K or HD. You just got many more pixels in there, so it's going to be less likely to do it. But we're putting stuff up on a big volume. And so depending on the pitch of that volume, how the distance between the LEDs on there, you know, you can introduce Moire in just about any LED environment that you're shooting in with the camera. So you want to capture your stuff to where there wasn't any to begin with. And by the way, if you get Moire, how many of you ever shot something with Moire? You came home and you looked at it, yeah. How many of you had any success at removing that in post? Same number of hands will go up. You can't get it out. Even the most modern algorithms right now, it's not fixable.
On the set, you can. There's a couple tricks. You
yes,
can,
there are.
and reduce
Slightly
the depth of field.
defocus, yes, change depth of field.
But if you don't have it to start with, you're much better
Yeah.
off.
And then the second aspect is when you're on the volume shooting. So now we've got our screen back there. Now we're shooting the scenes. You know, we're shooting the movie or whatever it is in front of that. And we want to make sure that we're not getting Moire from the pixels on the volume back there. Because that, you can get them, sometimes you don't have to work very hard at it. It depends on a lot of things. Focal length of the lens, where you're focused on, the distance from the lens to the background, how much you're zoomed in or not, the angles that you're at sometimes, the angle that you are from the screen. There's a number of things that can cause these problems. So if you're trying to shoot those without an OLPF, in my opinion, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
And that's part of why they have them. So there's two real good applications for the OLPF.
And you can mix the cameras too. Right now we're mixing OLPF cameras and the original cameras.
And you don't,
you can't see the difference.
I can't see any
otherwise.
difference at all. You know, the tiny bit of softening that occurs with the OLPF, I think it's imperceptible. I mean, I don't notice it, even when I've done side-by-side stuff. And that's the idea. You don't want to go so heavy-handed with it that, you know, that you're having issues.
Yeah,
and by the way, if I can just add too, and I like the guys at Rawlite, by the way. They've been very accommodating. I tested one of their 12K OLPFs. You know, it worked good. The difference between theirs and what Blackmagic does is that Blackmagic, because of the way that their OLPF is designed, there's a recalibration when you send your camera in to get one added, for example, which I did. There's a recalibration that happens with the sensor that slightly reduces the chroma noise in the red channel. So it's even cleaner than it is normally. So when you get the OLPF camera, or if you have yours sent in to do that, they do that. And that's a lot more than you would get by just taking another you know, non-original manufacturer like the Rawlite and putting it on there, as good as that may be. So there are positively advantages to using the Blackmagic one. I say that with apologies to my friends at Rawlite. They're both good products, but there's a reason to use the Blackmagic one and have them do it.
Jody.
You're welcome, Jim. Always a pleasure. Thank you.